Hi, welcome to Slay with me, Leigh M. Clark. I am the founder and CEO of Slay the USA, book series that features women like our guest today, Cathy Bryant, who is in our Slaying Sarasota book. Cathy is with us today. She is the CEO of Streets of Paradise. It is such an important organization because it's combating homelessness in Sarasota. And for a long time, people wanted to turn the other way that homelessness was an issue in their area. A lot of people want to do that, but Cathy's been at the forefront of not just keep not enabling homelessness, but rather enabling people to get into homes and to get like housing and to get into a better situation. So she's a big advocate of educating people in the community on ways that they could help improve the state of humanity in their town. Kathy, anything I missed on my intro?
No, good morning. I'm so happy to see you.
Kathy's amazing. When I signed her, like she has an amazing story. Please, if you haven't read the book, check her chapter. She spent a lifetime pouring into her family. She has a very able adult daughter who has battled numbers of things, and just she just has such a beautiful spirit. And aside from having all this in her life, she went on to like go and solve world problems. So I think that that's so incredible. There needs to be more people like you, and God picked a good one, right? So yeah, we're gonna play 10 Ways to Slay. So the way it's gonna go, and Kathy, I prepped her a little bit, is we're gonna each come with 5 questions. I have mine prepared, she has her prepared, and we're gonna go back and forth. We want to create actionable advice and just interesting conversation around ways that we are trying to leave our marks in the world. So, with that, my first question for you is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice I have ever received would be in the end, you have to go to sleep with yourself. Like there's nobody else really there. Like you always hear like no regrets and this and that and other, but like sometimes there are things that are regrettable because you didn't want it to be like that. But in the end, you have to know that the way you chose to live and walk through the world on this day was good enough to go to sleep tonight. Like you're the only one you're going to answer to. So yeah, the world may be disappointed, or even you may be disappointed in yourself, but just having that knowledge that you did the very best you could from the place of love with the information you had at that time, right? Like, so I might look back on it 20 years later and say, oh, I wish I would have done that different, but that wasn't the information I had then. So just being able to walk through each day with no regrets.
That part, yeah, no, totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think when you can lay down your head at night with a clear conscience, knowing you did your best, like you said, with where you're at, with the information you have possible, and then forgiving yourself and giving yourself grace, the same grace we extend to others so easily should be extended to ourselves.
Yeah. So now do I get to ask you a question?
Now you get to ask me a question.
So what motivated you to start hearing women's stories? Because I just love stories, so I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, no, I feel like there's an authenticity gap. I feel like we're getting a lot of 90-second surface level stuff, and I have a lot of curiosity. I mean, honestly, this project started from me having gone to networking meetings in my town for over 10 years, doing a lot of like, oh, you look so cute, we should have lunch, and not really ever getting to know anyone and really not understanding people's backstory. And with social media, I'd see the highlights like, oh, she has 4 kids, oh, she went to Dubai, whatever it was, but I really didn't know who they were. And so that was really important to me just out of natural curiosity. But then I also realized how many women get a chance to tell their stories. And how can I create a platform for that type of storytelling? Not everyone's going to write a book, right? So how do we create a vehicle to create these legacies? Because, when you publish a book, that story lives infinitely as far as we know with Jeff Bezos' ideas. So, if it's on Amazon, you could great grandchildren could read your perspective. So I think capturing that is super, super important.
Yeah.
So I have one for you. I'm gonna get some coconut water. Mm. What is the coolest thing you're working on right now, and how is it making an impact?
Yeah, so in partnership with Red Cross and Mutual Aid Disaster Relief, we we will open on Friday. Super excited. The Love, Act, Repeat hub. So Love, Act, Repeat is sort of the Streets of Paradise motto. It's love, act, and do it again and again and again. That's the grit. So the hub is a space for most of the time, and hopefully like almost all the time, it will be a community center where people can come to build purposeful relationships, whether that be in art or yoga or open mic, like Friday is the opening. It has yoga, kirtan, open mic, fire spinning, cake celebration, things like that, and vendors. And then Saturday is a game night. The Saturday after that is an open mic poetry night. The Saturday after that is a trivia night. So we really just want to make this a place where people come to have community and those purposeful relationships. And then when there is a disaster, or if there is a disaster, whether that's, a hurricane or a personal fire, or who knows, like we all have disasters in our lives. So this is a place where people can come home to, rather than having to go to, you know, a community center that is less familiar, right? So we want people to feel like they're not just coming to another source of stress, but they're coming to a place where they already feel comfortable. And of course, it's open to people that have never been here before, because with the disaster relief and the partnership with Red Cross and Mutual Aid, we have solar and showers, and we have the mobile shower and laundry, of course, and then we have Starlink and all the things and the solar power. So we'll be able to help people reach their loved ones, let everybody know they're okay, and eat food together, recharge, reclean, laundry, things like that. So it'll become a day center of sorts. We won't have overnight shelter.
Amazing. And anybody who doesn't know, both Cathy and I live on the west coast of Florida. We now increasingly have been getting hurricane impact. And last year was when their book launched. We actually ended up having two brunches because there was a hurricane on either end of them. And a lot of the authors in the book lost homes in full flooding, and Cathy and team were displaced, and they were obviously they're combating homelessness. So you can imagine that a disaster like that really increases the odds of that becoming a problem for a lot of people. So not only creating a space, but a safe haven. And also, like all the things you listed made my little ADHD brain so happy, because you give people a lot of opportunities to feel like something creative that they can keep their mind off of things. Like I feel like creation is meditation. And so the fact that you give them arts, and not just a place to sleep, but a place to grow and a place to be mindful and a place to really evolve. So I think that that's so, so beautiful.
Yeah. So my next question is for you. In what ways have hearing all these stories from all across, because I know you have like stories from all across the US now, or getting pretty close. It's a pretty wide range do you have all coast to coast yet?
Yeah,
Pretty,
pretty much. We haven't hit
yeah.
California, but Vegas is pretty close.
So what do you think has been the biggest change in you from all this exposure?
Well, I mean, you know this, but I was terrified to leave my corporate job. It's not something I was comfortable doing. I've kept a corporate job the whole time and tried to do both. And one of the new authors just said something to me that was like profound. She said, "You can't succeed with your plan A if you have a plan B." And so I thought that that was really profound. And let me tell you, after interviewing hundreds of women, we have over 200 women in the series, so you can imagine how many interviews that took in order to comprise those women. I hear women who just went for it. They did it scared. They did it broke. They did it without a degree. They did it unknowing. They did it from driving Uber. They did it from, trying to do something different from their family. Like one girl, she really inspired me too. And I think protecting their dream has been a big thing. There's a girl in Boston, and she's an influencer, and her parents were really, really adverse to her being an influencer. I'll say her name, Sarah Noel Saint. Follow her because I'm all about hyping my authors. But
Hmm.
she said, she had been a nurse. She was going to be an influencer, and it was really not acceptable from her family because she has this degree, right? So instead of giving up on her dream, she just like stopped talking to her family for a little bit until she got it going, because she's like, I couldn't have somebody talk negatively about something I was already terrified to do, kind of thing. And I thought that like, obviously I'm not encouraging people to have estranged families, but when your dream matters so much, another author, an artist, Sally Evans in Orlando, was saying to me, she didn't mind giving up buying new clothes for a year. Nothing would be more painful than giving up on her dream. And that's
Yes.
impactful. So yeah, now I've taken the leap. I'm doing the scary thing of entrepreneurship. I encourage other people to go out there and do that. But if I boiled it down to what I learned, literally just go for it. And also, if you think you're gonna fail, you might. If you don't allow that to be an option, success is my only effing option. Failure is not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So yeah.
love that.
So what's one thing you wish you'd known sooner in life?
One thing I wish I would have known sooner in life. I think to care less about what other people think.
Mm.
I'm sort of echoing what you just said, but it's really powerful and also a huge part of my life. Like, um, I was very much a people pleaser, especially early on in my life. That was very much that was a huge part of our upbringing. Our raising was, the silence of girls and the positioning of girls and where girls were supposed to be in life and what we were supposed to do. And I wish I would have learned to live into my dreams and my voice earlier. And I'm still there. Like I am more comfortable in writing it than speaking it, but I think there's a lot of power in that. And putting the book out when I did it with you, that was terrifying to me. Like I rewrote that probably 300 times because there was just there was a lot of vulnerability, and learning how to sit with that vulnerability for when it's the greater good. Like I'm really okay with fitting into my role, but not so good with being on the other side, that the side where I'm being transparent. Like I was a rape and domestic violence crisis worker, so I'm really okay with hearing it. I'm not as comfortable with just being that vulnerable, but I do think that stories change us, stories grow us, and our shared stories are what make us bonded and connected. And so, like, really learning how to be, I wish I would have learned that sooner, because there's so much power and so much valuable relationships with amazing women that come from that you don't get, kind of like what you said in the beginning, where it's just, oh, we should get lunch sometime. Like that's it's keeping it very superficial. So learning to go deep and get vulnerable quickly, I wish I would have known that sooner.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's where true connection comes from. And as also a recovering people pleaser, I would say I learned that people pleasing was manipulative. And that's when it really stopped for me, because not letting your true feelings or intentions, going along with the flow, not having an opinion is not really how you feel. It's just appeasing others, and that's not being genuine. And your vibe attracts your tribe. And so as like open and honest as you can get to your comfortability level, that will bring in people who really appreciate who you genuinely are. But agree, that's one of the things that I think a lot of women in their 40s would like to tell the women in their 20s, but they won't know until they get there. It's one of
Right.
those things. Um,
Yeah.
okay.
So what was one of the most pivotal moments in your life?
Oh man. I think that there's two. One is they're both kind of awful. I think a lot of things come from awful things. One was losing my job in 2008. I spoke about that on the Today Show. I had to tied my identity entirely to what I did for work. And when I realized without that, I didn't know who I was without that. And that's what launched Kindly and doing random acts of kindness and really getting into doing things purposefully and not just for profit and not just, meaningful work that really fills your cup. And I think the other thing was, at the beginning of the series, some people know this, some people don't. Right before the first brunch, I was dating some loser, and now thank God I have a wonderful, amazing man in my life. But ended up getting my nose broken in 6 places, and had to face that. And I had this brunch and all these women who were slaying Southwest Florida, and here I was slain, and I had a choice to make in that moment. And I remember calling my agent she's like, we can reschedule, just get a filter, don't worry about it. And I'm like, how can I ask these women to show up vulnerably and share their stories widely and be fake and pretend I've got it all going on and I've got it figured out? That's the anti what I'm trying to do here. So that was a really tough but pivotal moment in my life. Again, no fear of judgment. This is who I am. This is what happened. I spoke about it publicly. I was judged really unfavorably for that. It was for attention. Listen, I got attention for taking pizzas to the fire department. That wasn't the gig. It was really about being real. And you don't want to invite somebody into your darkest day, but it was that summer I went online with no makeup and no eyelashes and no nails and like no F's given, like period. So I'm grateful for those two things that kind of brought me to my knees to pray.
Yeah.
And from that has come amazing things. I mean, like from that, like I had to get to know myself. I had to stay single. I had to figure out what I really needed in a partner. I had to find that person. And I've had to find myself and know I was okay alone to find that person that's really meant for me. So yeah, those were pretty pivotal moments. Kind of on the same thing, but like what do you want to know? Like, what do you, I guess, what creates your legacy for you? Like, what moments have driven what your legacy will be? How did you really get inspired to do what you do? What was the moment that brought you to, I need to get involved here?
Again, like you said, there was a few. There was with Streets of Paradise specifically, there was we were feeding people back when it was illegal to feed people and we kept getting arrested, and it was before there was a Streets of Paradise. And so but I remember like specifically a Thanksgiving in 2016, 2017 actually, when we were feeding people in the park and the police showed up, of course, whatever. But one of the most powerful pieces of that day was there was about 300 people in the park, and there was about 100 people that were homeless
Mm,
that were there for Thanksgiving food because they didn't have anywhere else to go. And then there was about 100 people that were privileged and they just like felt better about going, and then no judgment, right? Like I I was all of these things at one point in my life. So just talking about like there were the about 100 people that were, let's go early as a family and feed Thanksgiving, and then we can go home to our houses and homes and have our very safe, nice Thanksgiving together. And then there was about 100 people that maybe they had that. I mean, all of them had homes, they had a place to go, but they just needed community and they just needed somebody to be with so they weren't alone. And that realization that the common thread between all of them were that they all just wanted community. They all wanted to have a meaningful connection. They all wanted to have a purpose. They all wanted to have a place. And really that just that awareness of having the opportunity to create something that was that.
mm,
Um, and so that was, that was a really pivotal moment. And the second one then came about a year later after we had started Streets of Paradise doing that. Um, the county asked us if we would start furnishing homes for people coming off the streets. Initially, it was just
mm,
people coming off the streets because the federal government had made it illegal to move into an unfurnished home because the fail rate
mm,
was 87%. If you moved into an unfurnished home, you would fail at the percentage of 87%. And
mm,
my background was in drug and alcohol and sexual assault and domestic violence. And an 87%, so said inversely, right? If you have a furnished home, you're 87% more likely to succeed. Like
mm,
I had never seen an 87% success rate. So I really wanted to know like what creates that why, what's the why behind that?
mm,
And the very first person that we furnished for their house in March of 2019 was an 18-year-old boy aging out of foster care. So it really blew out of the water the stereotypes of what homelessness was and how we show up. And since then, we've furnished about 3,700 homes in Sarasota and Manatee counties, and none of them really fit the stereotype that I had in my mind. And I think, the back, it's partly why I asked you that question. Like the more stories you hear, the more stories you see,
mm.
less, the less room there is for the stereotypes. So that was a really
That,
pivotal
yeah.
moment in my life.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think those millions of tiny moments that comprise us, but I also love that you're interested in the psychology of why. Why is it that when we feel settled, do we feel safe, And I think
Mhm.
maybe that's it, right? Do you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and like right at the bottom is eating, breathing, sleeping, reproducing, physiological. and then safety. And
Yeah.
then obviously social is beyond that. And you talked about that, right? Community, the importance of community, the importance of belonging, being purpose driven.
Well, when you know me, like that's my big thing. Like that's what I think is lives and dies on everybody's success is that connectivity that with us. But imagine if you have an empty house and you don't have an extra chair, or you don't have a chair, you don't have a cup to give somebody a cup of water. Like having furnishings is what enables us to bring somebody into our homes. And is also if you're in trauma, like being in silence is deafening. And
Yes.
we've like being in silence is just the worst. So, having that TV or radio or a couch to lay on or a cup to offer a friend, like that just changes everything. And it
Amazing.
kind of beats your life down in a good way. Like it's harder to walk away if you got to move your shit.
That part. Yeah. I know. I just looked around, we're trying to get the house together. I'm like, yes, yeah, it's definitely
Yeah. Yeah. So is this my last question to you? I lost
I
count
think
because I've
last
been
question
talking
to you, I have another one for
forever.
you. Last question for me, I have another one for you.
Okay, because I could just keep asking you questions all day long. What was the happiest time of your life?
100% my son. I know that's like such a cliche answer. But I had a really difficult journey to becoming a mom. I went through IVF. I had 5 losses. I blogged a lot about that on HuffPost because of what you said earlier. Sometimes it's like you want to give that away to somebody who may be in the dark and is experiencing the same thing. Like it is a very hard thing to share that stuff publicly, especially the up and down of IVF and then what it became eventually adoption. It's a very talk about vulnerable space to be in. But my life is forever changed because of that. It's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah. I mean, the happiest, I'll break it down. So the happiest, I went through IVF, I went through years and losses, and I was $100,000 spent on IVF and had no money. And I literally did a GoFundMe for my son. I mean, for adoption at the time, and all of our friends kicked in, and we had a few thousand. And people knew I had done acts of kindness. And I got a message one day from an old friend of mine. Just knew her kind of casually from college, and she said she and her husband wanted to like send us all that we needed to make that adoption happen. And so I wouldn't have my son if it wasn't for those like acts of kindness and just putting myself out there and like letting people know, like I was very honest about where I was at in the journey. And sometimes when you're really honest about where you're at in the journey, people want to help. They genuinely want to help. And I was somebody who would help anyone anytime for anything. And I feel that karma is real. And people would ask me in interviews and stuff like, does it ever come back to you? And I don't tell the story. I didn't tell the story much until I knew my son knew his full story and was okay with being public, which he is now. He's 8 years old. So I was very quiet about a lot of his stuff until I knew that he was proud about his birth story. But yeah, no, the happiest time of my life, I got the call Super Bowl Sunday that he was on his way. I flew to California like immediately, and my son was 6 hours old when I met him, and it couldn't have gotten better. I was so terrified, and sometimes that happens when something great happens. You're like so scared it's gonna go away, or like I couldn't have been a more like I wanted a breathing monitor on him, I wanted a heart monitor on him, I wanted a security camera, I wanted like I wouldn't put the baby on board sticker on because I didn't want anybody to take him. So sometimes like in those
Mhm.
moments you almost can't believe it's real, but it is, and I'm so happy for it. So that thank you for that question because it is there's a reason everybody says they're kids, and most people can give you a profound answer as to why. So what's the most important thing you think residents of any city need to know in order to like be aware and help with like combating homelessness?
Shared stories again. I'm just gonna keep going back to it because once you know the stories, it changes. The number one cause of homelessness in America is a medical crisis. And
Mm,
so,
mm,
when you start hearing the stories, the average lifespan on the streets is 6 years. So what you may see as somebody just completely mentally ill, messed up on drugs, like all the judgments and all the things we have in our heads, like I challenge almost anyone to spend 6 days on the streets with nothing. Your stuff's going to get thrown away. It's illegal in America to be homeless now. People will not help you. In Florida, it's really hot and and the trauma that will happen. It's not if, it's not maybe, it's not if I make good choices. It's not I'm big and bad and protect myself. Like I've been on the streets doing this for a long time, and I think myself pretty tough. But I can promise you in 72 hours, I would be a broken mess that looks like your stereotype, because it's
Mhm.
just not possible to live like that. So, having those conversations, encouraging people, if you see somebody new on the streets, for the love, you have to be homeless for 1 year to qualify for most homeless services. 1 year, you have to be registered on the streets for a year. If your life expectancy is 6 years and you have to spend one of those, a sixth of your life on the struggle bus, it sets up barriers that are so hard. So support your local homeless workers, the people that are doing the work. If you have an opportunity to vote for temporary housing, I know and believe deeply that permanent housing and housing first is the right answer, but there has to be a bridge gap right now, especially right now. There's nowhere to go. Like I was just having a conversation with some of the officials in Sarasota, and really talking about like how are you all handling the compassion fatigue? Because I'm tired of telling mamas with 4 kids in their car that there's no answers. I'm tired of telling the dad that just got kicked out of his house because they can't pay the bills because of the medical, that there's nowhere for them to go. I'm tired of telling the 19-year-old that can't pay the rent, that is in between semesters of school, so there's no dorms open, that there's nowhere for them to go. Like I'm tired. So it's not, the stories aren't the stories that get told in the media. The stories aren't the
Mhm.
pictures that we see of homelessness. The stories are the individual stories. The stories are these that I'm telling you. That's the 18-year-olds aging out of foster care with nowhere to go. It's the kids
Mhm.
in college that don't have a home to go back to. So there's nowhere for them to be when the dorms are closed. It's the families that have been trying and trying and trying, but lost their house in the hurricane and now can't come up with first and last in security for a deposit or a fire or whatever. So there's just lots of reasons why people become homeless, and it's not all about choice. And in addition, the ones that do fit the stereotype, the mental illness and this is an illness. It's not a choice. It's an illness,
Mhm.
and there's
Mhm.
nowhere for you to go. We can't even we cannot get you into the hospital. I just talked to an officer yesterday and cried my eyeballs out because, as you know, my daughter has seizures, and there's a guy on the street that probably had 10 seizures in the 30 minutes I was talking to him. They'd prescribed him meds he can't afford. And the officer was like, yeah, but he has to want to. I can't make him. And even if he wants to, it'll be a 72-hour hold because we don't have long-term hospitalization for this kind of situation. We don't have the mental health. The man will be dead in 3 months. I guarantee it. If
And
you
a lot
ask
of times,
that,
sometimes that will lead to people doing things to get put in jail, A. But also I want to just stress to anybody, like, and I probably shouldn't say this, and this is not the sole cause of homelessness, but there is no debtor's jail. Okay. There is no debtor's jail. So medical debt, it looks terrifying, but there's no debtor's jail. Pay your mortgage, pay your lights, pay your water, put that to the
mhm,
side, get on a payment plan,
mhm,
$5 a month. Don't let that define you, because I think a lot of the way this crumbles for people is that unsurmountable number and amount of pressure mentally makes them feel like they're going to fail. So if you can always have in your mind there is no debtor's jail, you're not, but that's not, like I said, there's so many other reasons, mental illness, there's people who have no retirement plans. That's another one, people who did not plan for the long term and now cannot afford housing. People who are not in rent controlled apartments and things, all the things.
and there's lost jobs from being in the hospital or having a
Hmm.
medical,
That
which
part too.
there you lose. And then there's prescriptions. Like if you
That
can't
part
afford
too. And if
medications,
you can't afford prescriptions, then, and there aren't a lot of programs, and that's the other thing is what you're identifying is there's a lot of gaps in the system.
yeah.
And there's a lot of places, cracks for people to fall through that could otherwise be saved. And I think the most important message, as we kind of summarize the ways the conversation lays, is the stories matter. The stories matter. You don't know what somebody's been through, and you don't know what they look like last week, last month, last year. You don't know when your life can change in a moment.
Yep.
There's people, I mean, even when we talk about hurricanes, there's devastation you never saw coming. There's a song that says something like, the things that are you should have worried about are the things that blindside you on an idle Tuesday afternoon. Like, you never know.
Yep.
Judgment is reserved for Gus, God, universe, spirit. This is a new thing I'm saying to be inclusive, Gus. But
Yep.
it's, judgment is reserved there, and like it's our job to either give a hand up or leave it be. But like, to think, or to look down upon someone, you don't know their situation, and you don't know what needs they have that can't be met. And it is a
Yep.
domino effect. And once one thing goes downhill, it can be a series of things. So thank you for creating space for that. And I think, also just from this conversation, stories matter, connection matters, community matters. Making sure that people are seen, valued, and heard, and really creating deep, meaningful connections. I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies.
Yep.
And I already know everything there is to know about me. Like, I need to like learn what other people have been through. And to your point, the more we hear stories, the less we become stereotypical, because we realize everybody has had a million tiny moments that comprise who they are, how they got there, and what they think. And all we can do is honor our own journey,
Yep.
and try to, be that positive force, no matter how. And I also want to say this before we close, as somebody who ran a nonprofit for over a decade, even sharing the post is helpful. Don't just turn a
Yeah.
blind eye because you feel bad that you
Yeah.
can't write the check. Please. The sharing costs money. Like, the Instagram ads cost money. Do a like, do a share, do a comment. That's as much, it's like writing a check in our eyes as philanthropers. And I
And it
know
also
people
feels
get
like a
the
hug.
scroll past this guilt because they don't
Mhm.
spend $50 on that. You don't need to. You don't need
Mhm.
to. Just advocate, help, just spread the word. That is
100%.
enough. So if I could ever, and I will repeat that all throughout this podcast, anytime we get on the subject of philanthropy, the liking, the sharing, the commenting, the
That's
social
beautiful.
support
Yeah.
does infinite work for the organization. The algorithm will then tell other people who might have the checkbook who could help do something, or the canned goods, or the furniture, or the whatever. Just be a
Absolutely.
conduit of goodness, and don't worry about like the perception or ego around giving. Like, please don't, because that's
Yep.
not giving. But thank you for being one
Yep.
of our first guests on the show. I'm so excited. Thanks for playing 10 Ways to Slay. And thanks for,
I always
choosing. Yeah, thanks for choosing to make an impact. Thanks for choosing a career and a mission in life that is
you
changing
too.
lives every single day. Hey, thanks.
I'm really happy for you for taking that leap. Good
Thank
job.
you. Thank you. I think alignment's important, and these women like you inspire me every single day that, just go out there and follow your dreams, and do it unapologetically, and find the people who want to see that happen for you.
Got
Um,
that.
all right.
And
Well,
I'm
thank you,
holding on for the
Cathy.
story of taking everybody out of your life that won't let you live your dream.
That part, 100%. Well, thank you again. It's a close for us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank
Talk soon.
you. See you soon.